Hi guys! Today we are jumping into lesson 5 for math. So before you keep watching, make sure that you've already done lesson 4. You've watched the video for lesson 4, including the independent practice and the guided practice, and that you've done the homework for lesson 4. Alright, so make sure you've done all of that before you continue watching, because in this video we are moving on to lesson 5, and I want to make sure you've done lesson 4 before we move on. Alright, if you've done all those things, then keep watching because we're jumping into lesson 5.
Simplest form. Koala bears sleep for up to 18 hours each day. What part of a day do koalas sleep? Write your answer in simplest form. First, we need to write a fraction. We know that there are 24 hours in a day. The koala spends 18 of these hours sleeping. So 18/24. Simplest form. Koala bears sleep for up to 18 hours each day. What part of a day do koalas sleep? Write your answer in simplest form. First, we need to write a fraction. We know that there are 24 hours in a day. The koala spends 18 of these hours sleeping. So 18/24 represents the amount of time the koala spends sleeping. Next, divide by common factors. A common factor of 18 and 24 is 2. So divide the numerator and denominator by 2. The resulting fraction is 9/12. 9/12 has a common factor of 3, so it is not in simplest form. So divide the numerator and denominator by 3. Since the numerator and denominator in 3/4 have no common factor other than 1, the fraction is in simplest form. So 18/24 simplifies to 3/4. Koalas sleep up to 3/4 of a day.
All right, we are jumping into lesson 5. Under modules for today in math, I posted the link to a factor review video. If you have not watched that, go back and watch it because for lesson 5, we are going to be doing all kinds of factoring. And I want you to review that since it was about 2 weeks ago that we worked on that, or 1 or 2 weeks ago that we worked on factoring. So I want to make sure you have a really strong foundation for that before we jump into lesson 5, because if not, it'll make lesson 5 a lot more difficult, and I want it to be as easy for you as possible, okay? All lesson 5 is factoring and finding the simplest form. All right, so go watch that video and then come back here to finish lesson 5. If you've already watched it, then keep going and watching this video because we're moving on. Today we are working on finding fractions in their simplest form. Read here with me. A fraction in its simplest form is when its numerator and denominator have no common factor other than 1. The simplest form of a fraction is equivalent to the fraction. Let's do a quick vocab review. There are a couple words that we need to talk about. Numerator, denominator, and equivalent. Remember, our numerator is on top. It is the number of pieces that are colored in or the number of pieces we have. Our denominator is on the bottom, and it's how many pieces there are total. Equivalent means equal to. Equivalent and equal mean the same thing. Let's jump down to math in my world. Make sure you have these pages with you and you are doing them with me just like we would if we were together in class. Example 1. There are 12 ingredients in a bread recipe. Esteban needs to buy 8 out of 12, or 8/12 of the ingredients. Write 8/12 in its simplest form. Down here, it says, to write a fraction in simplest form, divide both the numerator and the denominator by the greatest common factor. The greatest common factor is the greatest of the common factors of 2 or more numbers. Notice how greatest common factor and simplest form are highlighted. That means they are vocabulary words. So on our chapter test, there's a good chance that those are going to be questions on there. What do those words mean? So make sure we really understand what simplest form and greatest common factor are. Step 1, find the common factors of 8 and 12. Okay, factoring is just when we list out all the numbers that we could multiply together to get a number. So in this case, what numbers could we multiply together to get 8 and 12. They did it for us. They're so nice. So the factors of 8 are 1, 2, 4, and 8. And the factors of 12 are 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12. So we need to figure out what are their common factors. That just means what factors do they have that are the same. So they both have 1. They both have 2. They both have 4. Do they both have 3? No. 6? No. 8? No. 12? No. So their common factors are 1, 2, and 4. I'm writing below the lines because it's hard to write perfectly when I'm using this pen. So the greatest factor is the highest factor that they have in common. So which number is the highest out of 1, 2, or 4? 4. So their greatest common factor is 4. Now what we need to do is we need to divide 8/12 by 4. So we're dividing 8 by 4 and 12 by 4. 8 divided by 4 is 2. 12 divided by 4 is 3. Remember, we can think of division as just an inverse multiplication, backwards multiplication. 4 times what number equals 8, and it's 2. 4 times what number equals 12? 3. So the numbers 2 and 3 have no common factor other than 1. If I list out the factors of 2, I have 1 and 2. If I list out the common factors of 3, I just have 1 and 3. The only common factor they have is 1, which means it's in its simplest form. So 8/12 in its simplest form is 2/3. Pause the video if you need to make sure we really understand this page. Make sure we understand what simplest form is and greatest common factor is, how to factor numbers and decide what its greatest common factor is, and how to divide. All right? Pause it if you need, and I'm going to move on to the next video, or the next page. Flip to the next page with me. It says at the top, let me turn my pen on. To write a fraction in simplest form, you can also divide by common factors. A new koala is 6/8 inches long. Write the fraction in simplest form. All right, so first we need to write the fraction. 6/8. Now divide by common factors. So I need to figure out the factors of 6 and 8. I know that 1 and 6, because 1 and whatever number we're working with are always factors, and 2 and 3, because when I multiply 2 times 3, I get 6. So those are my factors of 6. My factors of 8, I start with 1 and 8, because I know that 1 times the number I'm working with is always a factor pair, identity property of multiplication. And then I know that 2 times 4 is 8. All right, so a common factor that 6 and 8 have, they both have 1, they both have 2. 3 is not the same as anything, 4 is not the same, 6 isn't the same, and 8 isn't anything, or the same as any other numbers. So the common factor here is 2. So I need to divide 6/8 by 2. So I divide 6 by 2 and get 3, or I could think about 2 times what number gives me 6, and it's 3. And then divide 8 by 2, or think about 2 times what number gives me 8, and it is 4. So a common factor of 6 and 8 is 2. So when I divide it by 2, 6/8 simplifies to 3/4. A newborn koala is 3/4 inch long. Okay, helpful hint over here. Divide until the numerator and the denominator have no common factor other than 1. So that means 1 is going to be a factor. 1 is always a factor. But that is the only one that they have in common, or that is the only one that they have the same. Pause again if you need to. Make sure you really understand this. Go back and rewatch it if you need help on it. Make sure you are filling these in with me. And let's jump down here to guided practice. Write each fraction in its simplest form. If it is in its simplest form, write simplest form. Okay, so what we need to do first, I'm going to try and zoom in. Oh, won't let me. That's all right. All right, so what we need to do first is we need to find all the factors of our numbers in our fraction, and then we can divide by its greatest common factor. So for 2, our factors are, let me make this bigger and try and write on top of the koala. Our factors of 2 are 1 and 2. That's it. Our factors of 4 are 1 2, and 4. You can't really see that very well. Maybe if I do orange. The greatest common factor that they have is 2. So I need to divide 2/4 by 2. 2 divided by 2, any number divided by itself is always 1. And 4 divided by 2 is 2. So 2/4 written in its simplest form is 1/2. Moving on to number 2, 6/10. I need to list out the factors of 6 and 10. I know the factors of 6 are 1 and 6, always 1, in whatever number we're working with. And then I need to think about what other numbers multiply together to give 6. I know 2 and 3, and that's it. For 10, I have 1 and 10. I also have 2 and 5. Those are the only numbers that you can multiply together to get 10. Now, which numbers do they have in common? They have 1 in common. They have 2 in common. 3 is not common, and 5 they don't have in common. 6 they don't have in common, and 10 they don't have in common. So the highest factor that they have in common, or the greatest common factor, is 2. So I need to divide 6 divided by 2 and 10 divided by 2. 6 divided by 2, well, I know that 3 times 2 is 6, so 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. So 6/10 in its simplest form is 3/5. Number 3, 5/6. All right, we need to list first all of the factors of 5 and 6. So for 5, I know 1 and 5. 5 is a prime number. Remember, the only factors that a prime number has are 1 in itself. Okay, so I can't factor 5 anymore. 6 we already did. We know that it is 1, 2, 3, and 6. Well, the only factor that they have in common is 1. And when the only common factor is 1, we know that the number is already in its simplest form. So there's nothing else we can do to number 3. 3 is already in its simplest form, so we could just write simplest form. The only common factor it has is 1, so that's it. It's in its simplest form. Number 4, we need to find the factors of 4 and 12. All right, I'm going to switch to green so you can see where I'm writing because it's all starting to mush together. So for 4, I know my factors 1 and 4. I also know 2 times 2, and that's it. For 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12. Still kind of hard to see, sorry. So now, what factors do they have in common? They both have 1, they both have 2, and they both have 4. So the highest, or the greatest common factor, the highest number they have in common is 4. So I need to divide 4 by 4 and 12 by 4. 4 divided by 4, any number divided by itself is always 1. And 12 divided by 4, or I can think about it as 4 times what number gives me 12, and it's 3. So 4/12 in its simplest form is 1/3. All right, you need to now do the independent practice. What I'm going to do for the independent practice is I'm going to just post the answer key for you to look at, and also the answer key for tonight's homework, but I won't post that answer key until tomorrow. So do the independent practice and then come back and check your answers with the answer key I have posted in Canvas. Tomorrow I will post the homework answer key and we will move on to lesson 6. All right, go back and watch these videos if you need. Keep practicing, and I will see you tomorrow for lesson 6.